Society for Property Technology, ASAT, and Korea Invention Promotion Association, KIPA, and 26 co-organizers, and supported by 14 organizations. My name is Sungpil Jung, Secretary of ASAT and Master of this opening ceremony. The 3-day conference to share knowledge on sustainable development, appropriate technology, policies, and experience in the real world from the professionals was held yesterday. Now I will hand over to Professor Sung An to give you opening speech. Please welcome Professor Sung An, Chair of ICEAS 2022 and President of ASAT, with a big round of applause.
Recording in progress.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and participants for the ICEAS, the International Conference on Energy, Aquatech, and Sustainability 2022. The first ICEAS conference was held in Arusha, Tanzania in 2017, when we have first international center sponsored by Ministry of Science and Technology, ICT, of Korea. Now we are having the 5th conference in the city of Ansan, the Hanyang University Erika campus, as you are sitting here. And this is a hybrid conference, so we have participants sitting in this conference room as well as the online together. And this year we have a new organizer, which is the Korea Intellectual Property Office, KIPO, and Korea Invention Promotion Association. So I deeply appreciate your participation to the conference and sponsoring. Although this main conference is focused on, as title, the energy, sustainability, and water technology, and this appropriate technology, usually people think this is intermediate or low technology for developing countries. But as you see in the program, we have state-of-the-art technologies in various fields which can make the developing countries as well as the developed countries more sustainable. On behalf of the committee members of ICEAS 2022, it's my great honor and pleasure to invite all speakers, especially plenary keynote forum speakers, who share their visions and sustainable solutions for the global issues. Especially Mr. Omar Hernandez, the Public Information Officer of UN Academic Impact, and Mr. Seong Yoon, Director of Intellectual Property Trade and Cooperation Division of KIPO. And I would express my deepest appreciation to President Woo Seung Kim of Hanyang University and Han-Seung Lee, Vice President of Hanyang University, hosting this conference in this very nice campus and nice conference site. And also I try to express my deepest gratitude to Mr. Sam Sun-moon, Director General of the KIPO, and his congratulatory speeches are appreciated. The hard work of organizing committees chaired by Professor Ki-bok Min and the Professor of Hanyang University, Caroline Lee, and Secretary General Sungpil Jung, and Woo-gyun Chung, Hyung-jun Kim, and Secretary Ansan Park is greatly appreciated to make this conference successful. This year we have a special program. Usually we have plenary keynote speeches, and then this year we started a young researcher invited talk, and using that we try to invite young generation researchers and these activities by the younger generation, which impress our the activities in appropriate technology as well as the technology development for the world with the great issues. I wish all enjoy our conference, and hopefully this is more like a multidisciplinary conference, not from the beginning, but nowadays we have about 104 speakers from 10 different countries. As you see, we have a lot of members, and I'm really pleased to see the members from Indonesia, members from Tanzania, China, and Germany, and many other countries representing their the study and then their research. Although we have a still COVID environment, this year was different from last year, because last year we tried to make a hybrid conference, but because of severe COVID situation, we couldn't have actual face-to-face meeting. So I'm really pleased to see you all, and hope to see you in the session, and wish you all the successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor An. So we are here at nice Erika campus of Hanyang University. Please welcome Vice President of Hanyang University, Professor Hanseung Lee, who will be delivering welcome message to you with a big round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hanseung Lee, Vice President of the Erika Campus, Hanyang University. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to the Erika Campus, Hanyang University. And I would like to congratulate you on the hosting of the international conference on energy, aquatech, and sustainability, ICEAS 2022. I heard that the theme of ICEAS 2022 is sustainability to solve the global problems. In addition, the presentation topics are energy, water and environment, appropriate technology, climate change and sustainable development, and smart technology. Hanyang University also recognized the importance of ESG, environment, social governance, and SDGs, sustainable development goals. Therefore, ESG and SDGs are actively reflected not only in the university curriculum, research, education, and service, but also in university management. It is my hope that the excellent research at this international conference will inspire the realization of sustainability in global society. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to the academic society for appropriate technology and the Korea Invention Promotion Association for organizing this international conference. In particular, I would like to express my special thanks to Professor Hanyang Lee for arranging this international conference to be held on the Erika campus. So once again, I welcome you to Erika campus, Hanyang University, and I wish you all good health and happiness. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Hanseung Lee. Now we will hear congratulatory message from Director General, Intellectual Property Protection and International Cooperation Bureau of Korea Intellectual Property Office, KIFO Korea. Please welcome Mr. Samsun Moon with a big round of applause.
Good morning. I'm Samsun Moon, Director General of Intellectual Property Protection and International Cooperation Bureau of the Korean Intellectual Property Office, KIPO. First of all, thank you, Chairman Sung An of the Academic Society for the Appropriate Technology for giving me the opportunity to make a congratulatory message. Also, thank you to Vice President Ansan Lee of Hanyang University, Mr. Omar Hernandez of United Nations Academic Impact, as well as all the guests here and those participating online. I'd like to give my congratulations to the Academic Society of Appropriate Technology and the Korea Invention Promotion Association, KIPA, for jointly organizing this event. Although last year's event had to be held due to COVID-19, fortunately, this year we are able to have a participant here in person, which makes this event much more meaningful. I think ICEAS is a proper international platform for sharing the recent trends and issues about appropriate technologies related to renewable energy, aquatech, and sustainable development. Researchers of appropriate technology aim to develop eco-friendly technologies in consideration of their users and surrounding conditions, in addition to finding ways for sustainable application from a user's perspective. This type of appropriate technology contributes to local community development and capacity strengthening, improve quality of life, and reduce impact on the environment. When appropriate technology is applied, new approaches could come to light as rational options, such as improving the capabilities of advanced technology to suit local needs or attempting to move to create other uses. For the development and application of appropriate technology, cooperation among private sector, government, and academia in various fields would be required. The government is promoting various efforts and policies for appropriate technologies, and as part of that, KIPO is also striving to expand and distribute sustainable appropriate technologies. In order to benefit as many people as possible, existing patent information offers simple and low-cost technology solutions. For developing countries, KIPO and KIPA have the know-how to utilize patent information for this process. Being Korea's agency on intellectual property rights, KIPO has been promoting ODA project based on intellectual property with KIPA under the name of Global IP Sharing Project. In particular, we have carried out many projects utilizing patent information to develop appropriate technologies for addressing problems in local communities and supporting sustainable economic growth of developing countries. In just over a decade, we've developed and distributed 30 appropriate technologies for 17 countries. These are customized to meet the demands of each recipient country and to work with the local infrastructure, ultimately contributing to quality of local life and income. For example, the Urano starch extractors supplied to the Philippines in 2021 increased sales by 730% within the first half of this year, despite pandemic. Also, smart greenhouse controllers supplied to Mongolia in 2018 increased vegetable production by 65% in 1 year. The recent pandemic has made the world more aware of the issues such as energy, resource shortage, as well as the need to find solutions for sustainable economic development and coexistence as a global communities. I believe these researchers and policymakers involved with the appropriate technologies play an important role in preparing countermeasures regarding environment and sustainability concern. Through today's event, I hope ICEAS 2022 will be a meaningful place to share their experience with each other, learn know-how from various experts, and discuss ideas from development together. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Samson Moon. So now we're gonna have a photo time for all together. So delegates in this hall, please move to front to have a group photo at ICEAS 2022. Okay, then all the members in the hall, please move front to have a group photo together. Yeah, please move all the members here in the front to have a group photo together.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline Hanyang Lee from Hanyang University, and it's my great honor to introduce two honorable plenary speakers. The first speaker is Mr. Omar Hernandez. Mr. Omar Hernandez is a public information officer and program manager of the United Nations Academic Impact Initiative and focal point on sustainable development goals and institutions of higher education. Previously, he served as a volunteer and conference management specialist at the United Nations Climate Changes Secretarial and as a consultant for the Education for Justice Initiative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And Mr. Hernandez volunteered with the Liaison's Office of the United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees and also with the World Federation of United Nations Association, as well as for the United Nations Association of the Venezuela. Today, he's gonna give a talk on the role of universities in the decade of actions for the SDGs, and he's gonna be giving a talk online. Please welcome him with a big applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed to the organizers of this conference. It is a privilege and honor to address you on behalf of the United Nations Academic Impact, which is an initiative housed in the Outreach Division of the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations Department Secretariat here in New York, not far from where I am right now. It's very late here in New York, it's 10 p.m. So nonetheless, it's a privilege, as I said, to be able to address to you today, especially to talk about the importance of institutions of higher education when it comes to the realization and advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals. As I said, this initiative, the United Nations Academic Impact, is the only office within the United Nations Secretariat, but also the United Nations system across the world that is specifically mandated to liaise with universities and colleges, but also with think tanks and the research centers. And the idea is to align these institutions with the goals and principles of the United Nations. And it was created actually by former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon over a decade ago. And today, this initiative has over 1,600 member institutions in over 150 member states of the United Nations. So we have a very large membership composed of academics, but also scholars, scientists, lecturers, instructors, university staff, and of course, students at both the undergraduate and graduate levels, as well as PhD candidates. So all this human potential immediately connects with the notion of intellectual social responsibility. We have heard for over more than 2, 3, if not more decades about corporate social responsibility, something that is a concept familiar to a number of multinational companies. But when it comes to intellectual social responsibility, perhaps it's not a so well-known term. And certainly universities, the way they were conceived and the way they were understood for many, many years, that conceptualization of universities as centers of knowledge and expertise that were somehow away from the needs of the community, away from the needs of societies, that notion has radically changed, particularly in the last few years, and particularly given the current circumstances that the world is changing, not only in terms of peace and security, but also the challenges related to the climate emergency that the whole planet is facing, and of course, the global pandemic that we'll still have of COVID-19. So I believe that whatever we understood about universities and colleges pre-pandemic or pre-21st century, that is in the past. What we have now, indeed, universities and colleges, institutions of higher education in general, they do have the knowledge, they do have the expertise, and they do have the experience. But these institutions have opened their doors and have opened their campuses to the rest of the world, and they are sharing what they know. They are sharing the results of their research, and also they are engaging in a large and wide range of activities and initiatives related to the community, to the most vulnerable, to those who have no voice, or those who, even though have a voice, that voice is somehow unheard, or perhaps they do not receive the attention that they deserve. So it's not by coincidence that when the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted, academia per se was included in the agenda itself, not only in terms of, as pointed out in Goal 4 related to quality education and the whole discussion about access to higher education, but it goes way beyond that. If we read the actual agenda, in addition to the Sustainable Development Goals and the different targets that are there, we can clearly see one word: academia. And of course, we understand by academia the whole conglomerate of people that make the life of universities and colleges. But academia is not only mentioned, our role is purposely given to universities and colleges in that agenda. Specifically, the agenda calls academia a valuable stakeholder for the implementation. So there are two important notions here. First one is a valuable stakeholder, as valuable as a private sector, as valuable as civil society. But also, perhaps more importantly, academia is a valuable stakeholder for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. What that means in practice is that institutions of higher education are there not only to teach about the SDGs, they are there also to provide tangible, concrete, innovative, creative solutions to the global challenges. They are there to provide solutions that actually facilitate the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the world was already facing a great deal of challenges to be able to achieve these goals, because if we call it an agenda, it means there is a plan of action. It also means that there's a deadline, and that deadline is the year 2030. And when the SDGs were adopted, 2030 seemed perhaps very far away in the future. We are now almost, well, actually more than half of 2022 has elapsed. So we are less than 8 years to reach that deadline. And if you ask me, most of the world is far away to achieve the SDGs, and the advancements that many countries achieved were certainly they certainly suffer a drawback, the devastating consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, of course, this perhaps does not draw a very positive scenario, does not draw a very positive overview. Having said that, and although this might sound as a cliche, this global crisis is also an opportunity in disguise. It's an opportunity to rethink what we have done. It's an opportunity to rethink what we can do better. It's an opportunity to rethink about the role that all and each one of us have to have a more sustainable world. And certainly it is an opportunity for universities and colleges to really see what their role is, in addition to whatever the 2030 Agenda has written related to academia, what the actual role is to help particularly those countries in the developing world that are very far away to achieve not even the whole agenda, but even one of those SDGs. Because in the global north, where many things are perhaps a given and not subject to any discussion whatsoever, in many countries, actually in the vast majority of the world, there are a tremendous amount of challenges of political nature. There are socioeconomic circumstances. There's lack of financial resources, of technological capacities to actually allow these countries to achieve the SDGs. What we have done in the UN Academic Impact not only is to take universities and lead them to the forefront of this fight to achieve the SDGs, to demonstrate what they do, to demonstrate that many universities around the world are embedding the SDGs in the curricula of the different academic programs they have. It doesn't matter if you study law, if you study international relations, if you study engineering, every single student have to be tied to sustainable development goals one way or another. Many universities are mapping their research projects and they have to be connected at least with one of the sustainable development goals. Many universities are actually executing and implementing a sustainability guidance that comes from the very top of the university, and the rest of the structure of the institution have to fulfill and to work in alignment with that sustainable strategy or guidance. Many universities are collaborating directly with local governments, with civil society organizations, with social movements, with foundations, churches, even, to help solve the most critical problems that that particular community is facing. Because of course, sustainable development goals like human rights, enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are universal, international, and global in nature. But it's not the same to speak about poverty or gender equality or lack of employment in an urban setting than in a rural area. It's not the same to speak about those issues in the United States, where I currently am, than in my home country, Venezuela, and Latin America. So certainly these disparities, these inequalities, these differences, these disparities are actually addressed and should be addressed by universities. And they're working closely with a wide range of stakeholders to come together, to use available resources, to share that knowledge and expertise that I talked about earlier. Also, universities are working directly with the people, and they're allowing people in, and they're allowing their experts out. So these synergies are the whole idea behind the concept of the new university, the university for the future, the university for the sustainable development goals. We have in the UN Academic Impact, in addition of using our platform to demonstrate and showcase what the universities are doing, we have been organizing a series of workshops, and this is very new. This is started just in December last year, and we have had over 5 of those workshops, 4 in English and 1 in Spanish, and we have had over 3,500 people joining from around the world in different time zones, and we have featured universities from a number of countries that are part of UNAI. And we have seen the enthusiasm. We have seen the intensity of their participation, and many universities have provided feedback afterwards saying, we want to showcase our efforts as well. And they have created WhatsApp groups, and they have created other means of communications between them. So we are letting universities to speak to themselves. They are sharing best practices, ideas, and solutions. So the title of my presentation, The Decade of Action, the role of universities in the Decade of Action, precisely the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, actually said that this was the Decade of Action. And it's not an excuse. It's not simply a marketing slogan. There is a need to actually make plausible, tangible, and concrete actions to advance the SDGs. The time to talk about the SDGs, the time to discuss about the SDGs, the time to analyze the feasibility or the relevance of the SDGs, that time has passed. We are not there. We are way beyond that. We are above that. We are in the time in which the philosophical, political debate about the SDGs, it's behind us. If we really want to comply with what we have been saying in the United Nations the last few years particularly, leaving no one behind, we have to act, and we have to act now. While we are here, there are many people that are fleeing their countries because of violence and the violation of the most fundamental human rights. That's actually SDG 16. While we are here, there are many girls that are being deprived of the right to education. It's also linked with the goals related to quality education and gender equality. While we are here, there are many people around the world, particularly in the global south, that have absolutely no clue if they're going to eat tomorrow or tonight. That has to do with poverty and hunger, SDGs 1 and 2. There are many people that has seen their livelihood completely destroyed as a consequence of natural disaster caused directly by climate change, which lead us to, for example, SDG 13. And interestingly enough, SDG 13 is not called climate action. I'm sorry, it's not called climate change, it's called climate action, meaning that climate change is a given and it has been deteriorating recently. So it is time to act about it, to do something about it. So when we think about the role of universities, actually one of the SDGs in particular, SDG 17, which perhaps is the less understood and is perhaps also the SDG that is most neglected, discussion about sustainable development. That particular SDG is about partnerships for the goals. And we can have different understanding about what's the meaning of the word partnership, what is the legal implication of calling somebody a partner. But it is a reality that if we were to achieve all the SDGs by 2030 around the world, it is a reality that we have to have academia in whatever we do. It's a reality that universities and colleges need to be at the forefront of the solutions. COVID-19 is an example of that. Actually, we feature on our website a development that was carried out by a university in Korea precisely about testing related to COVID-19. Most, and I will dare to say, all of the tests, the PCR test, the antigen test that has been and still are applied around the world, most of them, at least 90% of them, have been developed through the work of researchers in universities. The vaccines that we all have are precisely an outcome of the research that, for the most part, have been conducted in universities. Same with the viral treatments, same with the face mask that we have used. And this is just one example, an example that exemplifies, sorry for the redundancy, the great work that our professors, lecturers, instructors, scientists, and researchers are doing in sometimes with very limited resources and in very challenging circumstances. In many parts of the world, universities and colleges are basically supporting the state and the government because that state and that government perhaps do not have nor the expertise or the resources to do something, but the universities do. We in UNAI have collaborated and provided guidance with universities in many countries that now are collaborating with the country offices and the local presence of the United Nations in cooperation with the local and national government to do something about the SDGs, to provide statistics, to provide solutions. Universities are there as a shining light in times of darkness. Universities are there to provide what they know, but also they are there to hear about others, to hear from others, and to hear about the needs of the population that is suffering so much around the world, again, while we are here talking about the SDGs. Universities are there to remind us that in addition to provide them training, they are also in charge of promoting advocacy, to do outreach, to create awareness. The amount of work done by universities to, for example, advocate for vaccine equity, to provide access to health and education for girls. This is something that is incredible to see and even more incredible to watch. And I know over there are many people that are representing universities in that country, and many people affiliated with universities that are hearing my voice right now. It's not by coincidence that when it comes to providing solutions and ideas, the first ones to be called are usually people in universities. So I thank this opportunity to be able to address this prestigious conference. And let me say that the UN Academic Impact is ready to support the efforts of the international community towards the advancement of the Sustainable Development Goals, is ready to share what we have done as conveners of this intellectual social responsibility that comes from our own members in all 6 continents. And we are ready to work with as many stakeholders as possible. So on behalf of the United Nations, once again, thank you very much indeed for the invitation. And please do not hesitate to contact us at the UN Academic Impact here in New York to provide further information and details and to connect with us. We can work together, or we can work with our own member institutions around the world to make this a more equitable, a better future for future generations and for all us here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. We accept questions. We ask for questions. Is there any questions from the audience? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Omar. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. As a professor in a developing country, in the Philippines, actually our biggest, sorry for this. Sorry. Okay. Our biggest challenge in a developing country, just like the Philippines, is actually the budget, the limited budget and resources. As much as we would like to do research, we don't have that enough resources. So my question is, in your opinion, what's your suggestion? So how can we work together with more developed countries, just like Korea and US and others, so we could, engage more with research and collaborate with them? The steps, concrete steps. Thank you.
I would suggest basically to liaise with your counterparts in the global north. By counterparts, I mean specifically universities that perhaps are working in similar, if not identical, fields or areas of expertise. We have concrete examples, for example, from the University of Bergen in Norway that are working directly with the University of the West Indies in the Caribbean and the University of the South Pacific in Fiji, which are in the Pacific, in Oceania. And we have seen very clearly that that's a very concrete example that I provided scholarship, of course, with the funding of stakeholders. The government of Norway, for example, is supporting that. But I know many governments in Europe actually do provide funding for scholarships, fellowships, and research projects in specific areas. So my suggestion would be to liaise with the counterparts, but also with embassies of those countries in the developed world that you might have in Manila, and to try to find a way in which, if there are such funding opportunities, to see the requirements and the specificities of that. And I know for a fact that these opportunities do exist, but perhaps the information about them is somehow limited or not readily or easily accessible. But perhaps the diplomatic missions of such countries can be of assistance. And if not, the counterparts that you might find in institutions of higher education in these particular countries that might have better resources. And I'm sure, because I've talked to them on a regular basis, they're ready to assist and to work together and very closely with their counterparts in the global south.
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up. How about the United Nations? Do you have a specific program for students, for scholarship or research?
The United Nations, with very few exceptions, does not provide scholarship or fellowship to students. And I mean very few exceptions. UNICEF, for example, that is an entity outside of the Secretariat, is a specialized agency of the USD, does provide funding to certain academic programs and educational initiatives in the developing world in very exceptional circumstances. UNHCR, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, does the same. At the university level, that funding, those funding opportunities are somehow limited because the UN itself depends on two things basically, which are the regular budget that is composed of the financial resources that are provided by member states of the UN, but also most likely, and for most of the things we do, including the UN academic impact, by the way, we rely heavily, if not 100%, on voluntary donations that are provided by member states of the United Nations. So in that sense, I'm afraid that my answer to that will be there are very limited funding opportunities for students and in very limited circumstances. And I know for a fact, for example, if you're a refugee student somewhere, if UNHCR itself cannot provide the funding, it can certainly point into the right direction to those entities, private entities that can and do provide this funding, because I know myself refugee students that have received such funding on certain occasions.
Thank you for your answer and the question. And we have another question.
Hello, Mr. Omar. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a quick question. Since you are dealing with the public information, is there a platform that you are maintaining and that we can access for crucial informations and knowledges? Things are changing so fast now, and it's very hard to catch up with the new technologies and new things. Of course, there are things that will be protected with the copyright, but however, if there are some incentives that through you that we can have access to them, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
I mean, the first website that I would suggest, of course, is the one of the United Nations. Having said that, you might understand that the United Nations system is very large. We're talking about dozens of special agencies, fronts, and programs in addition to the Secretariat, in which I work here in New York, with thousands of people and covering a wide range of fields. And I always the example of ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal, in Canada. And they basically deal with civil aviation. And we have the World Health Organization in Geneva, which is so famous because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And everything in between. Literally, the United Nations system covers a wide range of fields. So I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able or entitled to just one website, but www.un.org, which is the generic, most important website of the UN, might be the entry platform to the rest of the system and point you in the right direction, depending on which is the area you are particularly most interested in or most focused on. And that of our own initiative is actually un.org/academic impact. That's a multilingual website in all 6 official languages of the UN, English, French, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic. And the information there is available, most of it in such languages. In the news section, when it says what's happening, you will see news articles that are published regularly highlighting the work of universities in a wide range of fields and areas as well.
Thank you for your question and answer. If no questions here in the audience, then we'd like to thank you again for your great talk, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you. Okay, it's my great joy to introduce the second honorable plenary speaker, Director Se-young-yoon. He's a director of Intellectual Property Trade and Cooperation Division of Korean Intellectual Property Office, KIPO. He has studied law at the Franklin Pierce Law Center at the USA, and he has been participating in the Korean Intellectual Property Office over 24 years, ever since 1998. And today, he's going to give a talk on IP ODA project by Korean Intellectual Property Office the current status and future plan. Let's welcome him with a big applause.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor for me to introduce myself to you. And first of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Academic Society for Corporate Technology and Korean Invention Promotion Association for inviting me to the 2022 ICEAS. I am pleased to deliver a plenary speech on the IP ODA project of the KIPO. This will be a unique approach from the perspective of intellectual property, especially related to the appropriate technology. Next. As you can see in the slide, my speech will be considered with 4 parts. It is widely known that Korea used to be one of the poorest countries devastated by the Korean War in 1950s. Grant aid and loan assistance from the global community lay foundation for Korea's economic development, so-called the miracle of Han River, in the terms of post-war recovery. As a result, Korea became a member of the G20 and one of the top 10 leading countries in the global economy. Korea has become a successful case and model of economic development of a developing country. In 2010, Korea joined the OECD's Development Assistance Committee and was officially recognized as a donor member. Since then, Korea has strived to align with the global community and contribute toward the sustainable development goal. Korea has shown global leadership by hosting many key events for development cooperation like this on the left part. And in addition, Korea is consolidating its position as a donor member by making improvement to its legal and policy system like on this right part. You can see this interesting graph. How can Korea, which lacks a natural resource and has a narrow land, achieve rapid economic growth? I think we can find one of the main reasons from the perspective of intellectual property. Especially, it is recognized that IP play an important role in economic development of Korea. While implementing the 5-year economic development plan of the Korean government, IP has a major driver of economic growth in Korea by providing effective protection of technology. As you can see from the graph in the presentation, we can witness that Korea's economic growth seems to be closely correlated to the number of patent applications. You are looking at another evidence that IP is a key factor in Korea's economic growth. Korea is also a top-ranked country in terms of number of industrial property right application, along with China, US, Japan, and Germany. Especially for the number of patent applications per GDP, Korea is ranked at the top, followed by China, Japan, Germany, USA. From the table, you can see the number of PCT application, which can be an important indicator of a high-quality technology. Korea ranked the fourth, following after China, US, and Japan. Looking more closely at the growth rate, Korea increased 3.2%, which is the highest out of top 5 countries. In this regard, Korea has continuously increased the number of applications of patent, trademark, etc., and is achieving economic growth. We can understand that IP can be a main drive force to improve and promote the growth. To show Korea's high capability with IP are two global assessments. The first, the Global Innovation Index by the World Intellectual Property Organization is an annual ranking of countries according to their innovative capability. Out of a total of 132 countries, Korea was the fifth place in 2020, then reached fifth place in 2021. 다시 백으로 한번. 아니, 다시 처음으로 한번. 예. 요 다음 그래프. 다음으로. 아까 월드 IP 있던 부분 있잖아요. 예. 다시 앞으로. 예, 여기서 눌러주세요. 예. From the graph on the right, you can see the movement of the ranking in the GII top 15. Korea has constantly ranked within the top 15 over the past few years. Second is the World Trademark Review. IP office in the world are annually evaluated by experts and based on the data collected by the World Trademark Review in 3 areas. In 2021, after introducing of the world's first mobile trademark filing system, Korea has been named as the most innovative IP office in the world by the WTR. Next, I'd like to introduce the IP sharing project with Kipo. This is the government organizational chart, and the IP sharing project, what I introduced today, belong to the IP Protection Corporation Division Bureau. After Korea joined the OECD in 2010, it promotes the government-led ODA project in earnest. The volume of ODA has continuously increased and more than doubled from 1.5 billion US dollar in 2012 to 3.3 billion US dollar in 2022. The budget will go up 6.4 billion US dollars in 2030. Korea has its own ODA, KIPO has its own ODA project called IP Sharing Project for building IP capacity and raising IP awareness in the developing country. IP sharing project can be divided into 2 groups depending on the implementation entity. One will be conducted by KIPO alone, and the other will be jointly conducted by KIPO and other ministry. To help your understanding of KIPO's IP sharing project, I will show you a video clip.
오늘날 대한민국은 반세기 만에 최빈국에서 경제규모 세계 10위권, 지식재산 5대 강국으로 성장하였습니다. 또한 공적개발 원조 수원국에서 공여국으로 전환한 최초의 국가로서 경험과 노하우를 바탕으로 개발도상국의 지속가능한 성장과 발전을 위해 노력하고 있습니다. 특히 한국특허청과 한국발명진흥회는 한국의 우수한 특허 정보를 활용한 적정기술과 브랜드 개발 및 보급을 통해 개발도상국의 기술 발전과 현지인 삶의 질 향상에 기여하는 지식재산 나눔 사업을 실시하고 있습니다. 2010년 아프리카 차드를 시작으로 우간다, 스리랑카, 파푸아뉴기니, 필리핀, 도미니카 공화국, 캄보디아, 베트남, 몽골 등 여러 국가의 배수 처리 장치, 코코넛 오일 추출기 등 특허 정보를 활용하여 다양한 적정 기술을 개발하여 보급하였습니다. 또한 현지 우수 제품의 상품 가치와 경쟁력을 높여 현지 소득 증대와 일자리 창출 등에 기여하기 위해 시장 및 제품 분석을 바탕으로 맞춤형 브랜드를 개발하여 미얀마, 가나, 인도네시아, 볼리비아, 캄보디아 등에 보급하였습니다. 예를 들면 인도네시아 아체 지역의 대표적 허브 식물인 파촐리의 오일 추출 관련 특허 정보를 활용 및 분석하여 현지에 최적화된 고효율 오일 추출기를 개발하였습니다. 한국특허청의 지식재산 나눔 사업을 통해 더 많은 오일을 더 높은 가격으로 판매할 수 있게 되어 아체 지역의 농민들이 더 많은 소득을 창출할 수 있게 되었습니다. 또한 몽골 양모 제작 농가의 소득 향상을 위한 천연 염료 추출 기술과 염색기 보급, 그리고 천연 염색한 양모 제품의 맞춤형 브랜드 개발을 지원하였습니다. 본 사업은 몽골 국영방송에도 소개되어 몽골 전역에 널리 알려졌습니다. 몽골 특허청은 한국특허청의 적정기술 보급 프로젝트 지원을 진심으로 감사드립니다. 이번 프로젝트는 몽골 전역에 기술 혁신의 중요성을 전파하였습니다. 이렇게 특허청과 한국발명진흥회는 적정기술 보급을 통해 수혜국의 역량을 강화하고 지속가능한 성장에 기여하고 있습니다. 저희 WIPO는 한국특허청과의 지식재산 분야 협력을 통해 다양한 분야에서 많은 성과를 이룰 수 있었습니다. 특허청과 한국발명진흥회는 지식재산 분야에서 글로벌 리더로 도약한 한국의 경험을 국제사회와 공유함으로써 인류 공영에 이바지하겠습니다.
I'm sure this video clip help make you understand better. I will explain in more detail from now on. IP sharing project basically use patent information. In case of an KIPOS project, patent information is used when developing appropriate technology as a solution to local issue, and in case of collaborative project, patent information is used when R&D is used as a solution to industrial problem. That's the difference. Both projects has something in common, that they increase the efficiency of appropriate technology development or R&D by utilizing patent information. I will explain in more detail about each type of project. As most of you well aware, appropriate technology should be sustainable, local, and affordable. People pay attention to the characteristics of appropriate technology that are eco-friendly, simple, and use local material to increase sustainability, and decide to solve the problem by developing appropriate technology using patent information. People recognize the importance of identifying and utilizing patent information in order to develop the appropriate technology suitable for the local environment. this is the strongest point of this project, I believe. Keep search from over 280 million pieces of IP information in this in its database and review scientific and technological literature and latest trend. Based on the information, appropriate technology can be developed that meet the goal of the sustainable development, like this on this presentation. Moreover, KIPO's project provide a related brand as well as establishing the strategy to utilize them, so that the developing countries are capable of dealing with the issue themselves. In that regard, KIPO expects to contribute to sustainable economic growth. You saw this kind of presentation before the video clip, so I'd like to skip this one. Next, I'd like to introduce the collaborative project. This is the collaborative project with Rural Development Administration. idea is addressing starvation worldwide by developing new seed and cultivation technology. RDA and KIPO sought their own growth by beyond solving the starvation problem in developing country by incorporating the appropriate technology and brand project of KIPO into the existing RDA project. The collaborative project with R&D will start next year and cost 260,000 per each sub-project over 3 years. Ministry of Science and ICT is addressing industrial problem by promoting a joint R&D between research institute in Korea and developing country. MSICT and KIPO increase the efficiency of joint R&D by incorporating the analysis of patent information into the existing MSICT project. The collaborative project with MSD start from 2021 and cost more than $1 million per each sub-project over 3 years. All of these projects that I introduced are continuously operate and research in the appropriate technology or other technology field can participate. I'd like to ask your participation in the near future. Lastly, I'd like to briefly introduce KIPO's future plan. KIPO has an interest in continuing to expand the budget and scope of IP sharing in response to the need of government ODA policy, appropriate technology, academia, and industry. In addition to MSICT and RDA, KIPO also tried to widen the collaborative project with other organizations like Good Neighbors, KOTRA, WIPO, and so on. In this sense, KIPO need your active support and close cooperation. Now, this is the IP ODA of KIPO, and I thank you for your listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, Mr. Yoon. For the time being, we're not going to accept the questions, and we're going to accept the question offline during the lunchtime. If you have any questions, maybe you can approach him and ask questions. And we'd like to thank him with a great presentation with a big applause. Thank you. We have a lunch after this. In the booklet, it says the lunch place is the 11th floor. but the place has been changed to the basement first floor, the B1. So why don't you go for your lunch? You have to go down to the basement first floor. So thank you for attending plenary speaker session, and I hope that you have a great lunch at the basement first floor. Thank you.